Hi, I'm Frank Lozano. Today, we're going to talk about sexual harassment in the workplace. Now, most people know that sexual behavior is not appropriate on the job, yet it still continues to be a problem. Why is that? And what can you do about it? Well, we're going to show you 6 typical workplace scenes. We'll also hear comments from 2 experts in the field. The goal is to get a clear idea of what sexual harassment is and isn't. We think you'll see that there's a lot that you can do to help keep your workplace harassment-free. So let's get started by looking at one situation that brings up several different issues.
So I'm thinking I'll turn in my expenses early to avoid the rush when everybody gets back from the conference. Whoa.
Hey, dude, move out of the way. I saw her first.
Hello, darling. Where did she come from?
She's new, that's for sure.
What department do you think?
The body department.
Some people around here need to grow up.
She comes.
Oh, where are you going, baby? Yeah? No? All right, you're lost. Hey, am I right, huh? Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Tighten up.
So, what is sexual harassment? Simply stated, sexual harassment is unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature. The key word here is unwelcome. Keep in mind, the person who finds the behavior unwelcome doesn't have to be directly involved.
Harassment is all about perception. It's not about intent. So it's the person who's hearing the conduct or seeing it or who's exposed to it. It's how they perceive it. It's whether or not they find that conduct welcome that's important.
Third-party harassment is actually very common. This occurs when 2 people, usually friends, have a relationship at work that involves a lot of joking around. The third party is not part of the joking around, but is someone who witnesses it, overhears it, or is frankly offended by that kind of language or that level of joking.
Third parties who weren't intended to ever hear the conduct or be exposed to the conduct can still have a claim for harassment.
Third-party complaints also happen when the victim has to witness flirtatious behavior or romantic behavior that he or she frankly finds distracting.
The conduct of a person who's an outsider, such as a vendor, supplier, consultant, even a customer, can also result in illegal harassment. The employer is responsible for taking all reasonable steps necessary to protect its employees, even from conduct by outsiders. Sometimes, as we just saw, it's obvious that the behavior is unwelcome because it's downright rude or disrespectful. Other times, it's not so clear. This next scene explores the concept of what unwelcome means. Let's take a look.
Hey.
Hey, yourself. Here, tell me what you think.
Wow, nice. I hope they appreciate it out there.
Make sure the peppers are nice and thick.
Catch you later. They're killing me with special orders tonight.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's cooking good looking.
Lots of work.
Oh, this looks good enough to eat.
Oh, no, it's not done yet. It's not done.
No, you've really outdone yourself this time.
Thanks. Oh, boy, I have a lot to do, if you don't mind.
Excuse me.
Well, what do you think? We saw similar behavior from the waiter and from the chef, yet her reaction to each was quite different. Whether something is welcome or not is up to the recipient. Behavior from one person may be okay, but not from another. A compliment might be appreciated from one coworker, but from another might seem too personal. A hug or friendly touch from a friend might be just fine, but from one person, it might feel like an invasion of personal space. A comment that amuses some could actually offend others.
We do have relationships with others in the workplace. We may even touch one another sometimes at the workplace. The question is trying to give individuals who are likely to engage in that behavior a sense of when it can be a problem. And it can be a problem when you don't know what the potential reaction of the recipient is.
While some behavior is clearly inappropriate at work, sexual cartoons, crude jokes, suggestive innuendo, other things might not be so clear. If it's not obvious that the behavior is inappropriate or unwelcome, it's important to let people know when they've crossed the line. Generally, if you conduct yourself in a professional manner, it's less likely you'll have problems. Now, this next scene shows how unprofessional dress and demeanor can cause trouble in the workplace for lots of reasons.
1900, are you kidding me? Wait, Rita, pull up that duplex you just had up there.
Girl, you are killing me today. You are too funny.
He wants to see the place on 4th Avenue. We could have seen this yesterday, but he's all, no, I don't want to see anything south of Grant.
What changed his mind?
Oh, like I'm supposed to know?
Hey.
Ooh, new listings. I've seen that place on Geneva Street. I saw it last week. They took the whole attic and turned it into a master suite that is divine. Ooh, speaking of which, how would you like to show him that place on 4th?
Oh, what's in it for me if I do?
Whoa, it's just me? Don't we have a dress code?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I see some of those outfits that she wears. I have to wonder, what was she thinking?
Hey, go back to that place on Washington, will you?
Okay.
Obviously, some people don't mind attracting sexual attention at work. But inappropriate attire or flirtatious conduct, even if appreciated by some, is likely to cause problems for others.
You want to have your employees give your customers, your clients, and the public a good impression of your company. And dresses that are too short or clothes that are too tight, things that show cleavage or that are transparent are not appropriate at work.
So it's best to save these outfits and this kind of conduct for after work. It's all part of showing consideration and respect. Now, our next story deals with the subject of workplace compliments. And while harassment is perhaps too strong a word for this, gender-based compliments can create a problem for some employees.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Alex.
This is Susan, our newest associate. Hi. She's going to be working with you on the senior housing project. It's Aaron,
It's nice to meet you.
Jeffrey,
Pleasure.
Hi.
and George.
Susan, really good to meet you. I know you're gonna love it here. My, you are pretty. Alex, you old scoundrel. Where have you been hiding her?
We should move on down to the conference room.
When Alex introduced Susan to the other architects on the project, did you notice that George's comments seemed to make Susan uncomfortable? What do you think? Is it okay to compliment one another in workplace situations? Let's use common sense here. Honest and well-meaning compliments are usually not unwelcome. However, at times they can actually become a problem. In Susan's case, George went on to establish a pattern of compliments or other patronizing behavior that undermined Susan's credibility and gave the impression of favoritism to her coworkers. George focused on her appearance and gender instead of on Susan's skills or her contribution to the job. So what's the solution? Susan could talk to Alex, her boss, or someone else in the company. Or she could speak to George herself.
Tell you what, it's getting late. Let's hit it first thing in the morning.
George, one more thing.
Sure.
It's about how I'm fitting in with the team. I think some of them don't take me seriously. One reason, of course, is that I'm new here, and I don't have as much experience. But I think another reason has to do with some of the things you say to me. Don't get me wrong, you say a lot of nice things, but when you talk about how I look, it tends to undermine my credibility. It's like that's all I have to offer. And I think some of the others resent it.
Look, Susan, I had no idea I was even doing that. I think at my age, I'd learned that lesson a long time ago. It won't happen anymore. Friends?
Colleagues. I'll see you tomorrow.
Right, we got a lot of work to do.
Fortunately, Susan was able to handle this situation herself, and George was receptive to her concerns. Studies show that more often than not, by simply telling someone their behavior is unwelcome, they'll stop. But what do you do if some people just don't get it?
Happy birthday to you.
Well, don't be bashful. Open up your gift.
Very funny. Male enhancement pills. I've got to get back to work.
We want a full report, all right?
Yeah.
You sure in a hurry to try them out, huh?
What's bugging him? Can't you take a joke?
No, he could have at least said thank you.
I know. I am so sorry about what just happened. I mean, I had no idea that they planned on bringing that gift.
I know. I know they're just trying to liven things up around here, but sometimes they can carry things too far.
Well, I know that you've said something to them in the past, but it seems to be getting even worse. I mean, the joking around, the gutter language. And what about that mug that Mary brought in?
I don't know what more I can do. You know, I'm starting to hate to come to work some days.
Let's talk to Florence. I know that she's overloaded with this new product line right now, but she needs to know about this.
Okay, yeah.
Playful teasing and pranks often go too far and can contribute to an atmosphere where people feel uncomfortable at work. Remember, it's not about your intentions or your feelings, it's about the other person's perception of the behavior.
Watch the reactions of individuals when they're exposed to particular types of conduct. When you see somebody stop laughing or frown or get upset, it's a very good indication that the conduct's not welcome.
The standard is, could it offend a reasonable person? And if it could, and it does offend this person, then it's crossed the line.
No one should have to dread coming to work because of the harassing conduct of his or her coworkers. If someone's behavior is bothering you, say something. Talk to the harasser, your boss, human resources, or anyone else in the organization who might be able to help. And if someone complains about your behavior, stop immediately. The courts have identified two forms of illegal sexual harassment: quid pro quo, meaning this for that, and the more common hostile work environment harassment. Now, what we've just seen happen to David at his birthday party is a form of hostile work environment harassment. He's asked his coworkers to stop, and yet they've continued to involve him in their inappropriate behavior. Hostile work environment harassment has been defined by the courts as ongoing, pervasive, or severe conduct of a sexual nature that unreasonably interferes with an employee's job performance or creates a hostile, offensive, or intimidating work environment. Workplace policies that prohibit harassment are usually even more strict than the law, in that they prohibit any unwelcome behavior of a sexual nature. So even though certain conduct may not yet be ongoing, pervasive, or severe, most wise employers draw the line at any unwelcome sexual conduct. Why wait until someone is hurt, embarrassed, or humiliated? It just makes sense to stop the offensive conduct before it causes serious problems. Let's see what happens when David takes the problem to his boss.
I had no idea this was happening. I'm going to talk to Mary today personally to get her side of the story, and then I'm going to address the issue with the whole group at our weekly meeting Monday morning. Let me assure you, I take this seriously. Thank you for bringing this to my attention.
Well, we appreciate your help.
I was hoping you wouldn't tell anyone that I was the one who complained.
Well, I can't guarantee you that no one will find out because I'm going to have to take some action to address the problem. And to be fair, I'll have to talk to some of your coworkers to verify what happened. But I'll certainly do my best to be discreet. Retaliation is also against the law and against our policy. So please let me know if anyone says or does anything that makes either of you regret coming forward and reporting this problem. Now let's go over the details, okay?
People sometimes hesitate to involve their boss, thinking they can handle the problem themselves, or they worry about retaliation. But remember, retaliation is also against the law. Now, let's see how David's boss can step in and help.
Thanks, you guys, for coming here. I really appreciate it. It's very important that we follow the law. And under the law, it is illegal to discriminate or harass a person based upon their race, their color, religion, national origin, or sex, or any other protected characteristic such as age or disability. It is also against our policy. So please don't hesitate to tell me if someone's bothering you. My door is always open. And remember, you don't have to like the people that you work with, but I expect you to get along. And that means refraining from behavior that causes someone to feel embarrassed, uncomfortable, intimidated, or disrespected. It's all spelled out here in black and white. And if you have any questions, just come and see me. I'm always available.
One of the most common misconceptions about what sexual harassment is and is not is the belief that only women are victims of harassment and only men are harassers. The truth is, of course, that women can harass men and other women, and men can harass men.
Same-sex harassment doesn't depend on the sexual orientation of either party. It is the behavior that's important in determining whether harassment has occurred, not the gender or the orientation of the individuals who are involved. Now, we've already seen that the hostile work environment harassment can be verbal, visual, or physical, but it can also be the result of unwelcome sexual advances or romantic interest.
Hey, it's lunchtime. You go on without me. I'm gonna take lunch late today, so I can avoid you-know-who. For once, I just want to eat my lunch in peace.
I don't blame you. He's weird. I'll see you later, okay?
You haven't gone to lunch yet? Something's wrong. Man does not live by bread alone. Sure don't take no for an answer, do you? Later.
Yeah. Here's a little poem from me to you, Tiffany.
Can't wait, Tiffany. No, this can't wait. It's Alan again. I thought you spoke to him. He follows me to lunch. He follows me to my car after work. He calls me at home. He sends me creepy emails. Here, look.
Look, Tiffany, I've already told him that you're not interested. What more can I do? This really seems like something personal between the two of you that you should be able to handle. Besides, I mean, he really seems quite harmless.
Jill, I need this to stop.
Tiffany, you're right. You should not have to put up with this. Let's call HR right now and see if they can help us, okay?
Okay.
Usually people stop their unwelcome behavior when asked, especially if a manager or supervisor talks to them. But even mild behavior can become a serious matter when it continues after a person has been asked to stop. Obviously, more serious steps must now be taken if the harassment continues. Discipline is sometimes needed in order to enforce company policy and to set an example to others. In some cases, discipline could even include termination. We've spent a lot of time looking at hostile work environment harassment. Now let's look at the other form of illegal sexual harassment called quid pro quo. In a quid pro quo situation, someone in a position of power demands sexual favors in exchange for job benefits, such as a promotion, raise, good performance review, that kind of thing. Or the opposite, threatens a person's job and suggests that unless sexual favors are given, there will be a loss of job benefits. Quid pro quo is a very serious form of sexual harassment with serious consequences. Most people in positions of authority know better than to risk their careers doing something this foolish. Therefore, it doesn't happen as much these days. And when it does happen, quid pro quo harassment can take a very subtle form.
All right, all right, all right. Woo. They're looking good, Coach. They gonna be ready for the big game Saturday?
Bet. We're ready now.
Well, you make sure they play as a team. You know how I like team players. I thought you might be interested to know what the committee decided. You're in the top 3.
Oh my gosh. Really? I can't believe it. Head coach of the women's team. Do you think I have a chance?
Well, it all depends. You know, as athletic director, my vote carries a lot of weight. I know how closely I have to work with the head coach, you know, with all the extra hours during season and all the traveling. I mean, it's crucial that we get along well.
What are you getting at?
Well, I'm just saying it's a very important decision, one that I think you can help me make. I mean, I have to admit that I have certain reservations about recommending you. But I'll bet you could convince me if you really tried. Now, if I were you, I wouldn't let this opportunity slip away. So you give it some thought. I have to make my recommendation in 10 days.
Everything okay, Coach? Yeah, fine. You sure?
Obviously, if the athletic director is actually threatening to not recommend the coach for the job unless she agrees to sexual favors, something quite serious has just happened. Serious and illegal. The consequences of this kind of behavior, conditioning a promotion on sexual favors, if proved, would likely result in the termination of the harasser. No one should have to put up with quid pro quo harassment ever. So, what is sexual harassment? Well, we know that it's unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature. The victim can be the intended recipient of the behavior, or the victim can be a third-party observer. The harasser can be a supervisor, a manager, or a coworker, or an outsider who's not even an employee. Employers must act reasonably to protect their employees from harassment, regardless of the source. Behavior crosses the line when it's not welcome, not returned, and not appreciated. Sexual behavior that offends, intimidates, humiliates, or insults is never appropriate in the workplace. And provocative dress and flirtatious conduct can cause problems too. Remember, intentions don't matter. Harassment is viewed from the victim's perspective. Hostile work environment harassment is ongoing, pervasive, or severe behavior that affects a person's ability to do his or her job or creates a hostile environment. Retaliation is also against the law. That means that people who report harassment or who participate in an investigation are protected. The most serious form of harassment, quid pro quo, happens when someone with power offers job benefits in exchange for sexual favors, or threatens the employee if the sexual overtures are rejected. So, what can you do to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace? Know what it is. Know your employer's policy. If someone complains about your behavior, stop. Don't wait for a chat with your boss, or worse. If someone's behavior is bothering you, say something. Tell the harasser. Tell a coworker who can help. Tell your manager. And don't hesitate to tell your manager's manager, or HR, or anyone else up the chain of command who can help. Remember, we all can do something to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. By conducting ourselves in a manner that doesn't interfere with others' ability to do their jobs, and by treating others with respect, we help create a working environment that benefits